Hello. So, I was born into a world where I could flip a switch and a light would come on. I could turn a faucet and water would come out. Turn a dial and my house would heat up or cool down. All of this was due to people generations before me, people who we would now count as the elderly. And I have great respect for that. I owe a lot of the convenience of my life to the generations that came before me. Now, COVID came out, and when it first came out, it affects the elderly. It affects everyone, but it affects the elderly more. And they were the worst case scenario. Not sure what to call it. There's a word term for it. Most affected, you know, group. Now, since then, other groups have come out, but at the time, when COVID initially came out, it was the elderly. And while I didn't want to rush out and do everything, the you know, government made a lot of decisions based on guesswork, and I didn't want to run out and do all of it because I knew it was based on guesswork. But for the sake of the elderly, and the fact that my life is better because of the life they lived, I was willing to do some of this stuff. Now, as time went on, the elderly sort of got shunted aside, and states which had big, we've got to crush out COVID, blah blah blah, all this extra rules, treated the elderly like dirt. And it's like, this guy's tested positive, but we don't want to let him come to our hospital, so we're just going to leave him in the old age home with the other elderly where he can affect them and put their lives in danger and all this other stuff. So my willingness to follow COVID policies dropped rapidly as I saw this happening. And as a whole, there was a lot of stupid stuff that was done with COVID. Uh, I'm going to do a few videos talking about this. It's not all science. Some of it's just my opinion. Some of it's just my observations. I will try to distinguish between stuff like that. At the same time, a lot of science was covered over, and that's another thing. We now have proof. Elon Musk bought out Twitter, went through the files, found that yes, the government was asking, Twitter and the other social media to conceal stories which question COVID policy and stuff like that. And foreign countries were allowing these stories to flow around. And so that's another thing. We were comparing what was happening in America to other countries, and they have these strict policies and they don't have as much COVID going around. And it turns out that it was almost an apples to orange type thing. Um, so there was a lot of, especially in a lot of these countries, they were allowing these stories that question COVID to be published or, freely accessed. So we get down to what's going on with this. Now, sounds a little conspiracy theorist, I know, and there are conspiracy theories around COVID. Um, I am more, like I said, I can sort of see, we want to stop misinformation, so I can sort of see there is some legitimacy to trying to cover over stories. So that's not 100% conspiracy theory, I think. Or it's not 100% conspiracy. I think it happened, but it's not a conspiracy. I do believe in agenda conspiracies. Conspiracy theory is, or agenda theory, I would say. Conspiracy theory is there's this big international plot to give the world COVID and control the masses, blah, 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 blah. Agenda theory is one person is benefiting from this and he wants to promote his agenda and he's doing it as best he can. And, look at the personalities that arose during COVID. A lot of these were slightly larger than average fish in a very small pond before COVID came along, and they became, national or international names. And so, depending on the individual, not everyone, some people can handle the sudden increase in power and handle it well. Other people, it went to their heads, and they became power hungry. They liked the power, they wanted more. Um, and so there are a lot of bad decisions made based on people's personal agendas of, oh, I can get more fame, I can get more notoriety, whatever, if I crush other people's opinions. So that went on. There was a lot about it. Now, like I said, there was a cover up. We know that the government tried to cover up or tried to influence the social media to cover up stories. 2 years ago, this video would have been banned as being misinformation. Now I'm assuming YouTube's going to let it go because we're past COVID, and so now it's just looking back at history, more not real history. My opinion, my saying what I'm saying now isn't going to cause it to spread suddenly because we're supposedly over COVID or over the worst of it. There are, of course, worries that a new wave is coming, and of course, some of the old agenda people are pushing that this new wave is coming, and they only make my point of view more believable, just because it's the same people coming up. A minor rise in cases has been called as upswing by some people, and it's the same people who gained power through COVID in the past. So anyway, this is just an introduction. I am going to be talking about COVID in a few of my upcoming videos. Again, they won't all be one right after another, but this is largely my opinion. I'm going to pull out information from some studies and stuff. I'm not going to rely too heavily on studies just because, like I said, so many of them have been covered over, and there's so much, that's fake science. No, this is real science. And, real science people, the people who argue real versus fake science, their definition is if it agrees with me, it's real. If it disagrees with me, it's fake. And I don't want to go down that road. But I am going to point out that, yes, there are studies which question the mainstream. And are they real science, fake science? I'll leave that to you. I have done some work in the health and safety industry myself, so I will be bringing some of my personal experience and point out a lot of the hypocrisy that I've seen with COVID. And so that's it. Like this is just my introduction. Probably won't have my first video on COVID for another 2 or 3 weeks maybe because I've got other ideas, and I do want to do a little bit of research on stuff before I actually start presenting things. My first 2 or 3 video ideas, I should definitely go through and look up some quote unquote official or dogma. Yeah, I'm going to call it dogma, in advance, because I disagree with some of it. A lot of it, these are stories I've heard and things I've read, and things where obvious lies were told. Especially, like I said, this is stuff I've worked for 30 years in the health and safety industry, and when COVID came around, stuff that I had been working with for 30 years was suddenly just sort of shoved aside and pretended like it, was not realistic anymore. And, there were some lies told to the common people, industry standards and stuff like that, which were just suddenly ignored because it's more convenient to try to do this and again, some people are trying to hold on to power, it seems like. So that's all for today. This was just an introduction, like I said. I will probably have one or two videos about other topics between now and my first one on COVID, but just wanted to share that and let you know it's coming. So have a nice day.